The People's Liberation Army Navy is the naval warfare branch of the People's Liberation Army, the national armed forces of the People's Republic of China. The plan can trace its lineage to naval units fighting during the Chinese Civil War and was established in September 1950. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, the Soviet Union provided assistance to the plan in the form of naval advisors and export of equipment and technology. Until the late 1980s, the plan was largely a riverine and littoral force. However, by the 1990s, following the fall of the Soviet Union and a shift towards a more forward-oriented foreign and security policy, the leaders of the Chinese military were freed from worrying over land border disputes, and instead turned their attention towards the seas. This led to the development of the People's Liberation Army Navy into a Green Water Navy by 2009. Before the 1990s, the plan had traditionally played a subordinate role to the People's Liberation Army ground force. In 2008, General Qian Lihua confirmed that China plans to operate a small fleet of aircraft carriers in the near future, but for the purpose of regional defense as opposed to global reach. As of 2013, PLA officials have also outlined plans to operate in the first and second island chains. Chinese strategists term the development of the plan from a green water navy into a regional blue water defensive and offensive navy. The People's Liberation Army Navy is composed of 5 branches. The People's Liberation Army Navy Submarine Force, the People's Liberation Army Navy Surface Force, the People's Liberation Army Navy Coastal Defense Force, the People's Liberation Army Marine Corps and the People's Liberation Army Naval Air Force. With a personnel strength of 255,000 servicemen and women, including 10,000 Marines and 26,000 Naval Air Force personnel, it is the second largest navy in the world in terms of tonnage, behind only the United States Navy, and has the largest number of major combatants of any navy. History. The plan traces its lineage to units of the Republic of China Navy who defected to the People's Liberation Army towards the end of the Chinese Civil War. In 1949, Mao Zedong asserted that to oppose imperialist aggression, we must build a powerful navy. During the landing operation on Hainan Island, the Communists used wooden junks fitted with mountain guns as both transport and warships against the Republic of China Navy. The Naval Academy was set up at Dalian on November 22, 1949, mostly with Soviet instructors. The Navy was established in September 1950 by consolidating regional naval forces under General Staff Department Command in Jiangyan, now in Taizhou, Jiangsu Province. It then consisted of a motley collection of ships and boats acquired from the Kuomintang forces. The Naval Air Force was added 2 years later. By 1954, an estimated 2,500 Soviet naval advisors were in China, possibly one advisor to every 30 Chinese naval personnel, and the Soviet Union began providing modern ships. With Soviet assistance, the Navy reorganized in 1954 and 1955 into the North Sea Fleet, East Sea Fleet, and South Sea Fleet, and a corps of admirals and other naval officers was established from the ranks of the ground forces. In shipbuilding, the Soviets first assisted the Chinese, then the Chinese copied Soviet designs without assistance, and finally the Chinese produced vessels of their own design. Eventually Soviet assistance progressed to the point that a joint Sino-Soviet Pacific Ocean fleet was under discussion. 1950s and 1960s Through the upheavals of the late 1950s and 1960s, the Navy remained relatively undisturbed. Under the leadership of Minister of National Defense Lin Biao, large investments were made in naval construction during the frugal years immediately after the Great Leap Forward. During the Cultural Revolution, a number of top naval commissars and commanders were purged, and naval forces were used to suppress a revolt in Wuhan in July 1967, but the service largely avoided the turmoil affecting the country. Although it paid lip service to Mao and assigned political commissars aboard ships, the Navy continued to train, build, and maintain the fleets as well the coastal defense and aviation arms, as well as in the performance of its mission. 1970s and 1980s. In the 1970s, when approximately 20% of the defense budget was allocated to naval forces, the Navy grew dramatically. The conventional submarine force increased from 35 to 100 boats, the number of missile-carrying ships grew from 20 to 200, and the production of larger surface ships, including support ships for ocean-going operations, increased. The Navy also began development of nuclear attack submarines and nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines. In the 1980s, under the leadership of Chief Naval Commander Liu Huaqing, the Navy developed into a regional naval power, though naval construction continued at a level somewhat below the 1970s rate. Liu Huaqing was an Army officer who spent most of his career in administrative positions involving science and technology. It was not until 1988 that the People's Liberation Army Navy was led by a naval officer. Liu was also very close to Deng Xiaoping as his modernization efforts were very much in keeping with Deng's national policies. While under his leadership naval construction yards produced fewer ships than the 1970s, greater emphasis was placed on technology and qualitative improvement. Modernization efforts also encompassed higher educational and technical standards for personnel. Reformulation of the traditional coastal defense doctrine and force structure in favor of more green water operations. And training in naval combined arms operations involving submarine, surface, naval aviation, and coastal defense forces. Examples of the expansion of China's capabilities were the 1980 recovery of an intercontinental ballistic missile in the Western Pacific by a 20-ship fleet, extended naval operations in the South China Sea in 1984 and 1985, and the visit of 2 naval ships to 3 South Asian nations in 1985. In 1982 the Navy conducted a successful test of an underwater-launched ballistic missile. The Navy also had some success in developing a variety of surface-to-surface and air-to-surface missiles, improving basic capabilities. In 1986 the Navy's order of battle included 2 Xia-class SSBNs armed with 12 CSSN-3 missiles and 3 Han-class SSNs armed with 6 SY-2 cruise missiles. In the late 1980s, major deficiencies reportedly remained in anti-submarine warfare, mine warfare, naval electronics, and naval aviation capabilities. The PLA Navy was ranked in 1987 as the 3rd largest navy in the world, although naval personnel had comprised only 12% of PLA strength. In 1987 the Navy consisted of the naval headquarters in Beijing. 3 fleet commands the North Sea Fleet, based at Qingdao, Shandong. The East Sea Fleet, based at Ningbo. And the South Sea Fleet, based at Xinjiang, Guangdong and about 2,000 ships. The 350,000-person Navy included Naval Air Force units of 34,000 men, the Coastal Defense Forces of 38,000, and the Marine Corps of 56,500. Navy headquarters, which controlled the 3 fleet commands, was subordinate to the PLA General Staff Department. In 1987, China's 1,500 km coastline was protected by more than 100 diesel-powered Romeo and Whiskey-class submarines, which could remain at sea only a limited time. Inside this protective ring and within range of shore-based aircraft were destroyers and frigates mounting Styx anti-ship missiles, depth-charge projectors, and guns up to 130 mm. Any invader penetrating the destroyer and frigate protection would have been swarmed by almost 900 fast attack craft. Stormy weather limited the range of these small boats, however, and curtailed air support. Behind the inner ring were Coastal Defense Force personnel operating naval shore batteries of Styx missiles and guns, backed by ground force units deployed in depth. Into the 21st century. As the 21st century approached, the plan began to transition to an offshore defensive strategy that entailed more out-of-area operations away from its traditional territorial waters. Between 1989 and 1993, the training ships paid ports visits to Hawaii, Thailand, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. Plan vessels visited Vladivostok in 1993, 1994, 1995, and 1996. Plan task groups also paid visits to Indonesia in 1995. North Korea in 1997. New Zealand, Australia, and the Philippines in 1998. Malaysia, Tanzania, South Africa, the United States, and Canada in 2000. And India, Pakistan, France, Italy, Germany, Britain, Hong Kong, Australia, and New Zealand in 2001. In March 1997, the Low-class guided missile destroyer Harbin, the Luda-class guided missile destroyer Zhuhai, and the replenishment oiler Nanang began the PLA Navy's first circumnavigation of the Pacific Ocean, a 98-day voyage with port visits to Mexico, Peru, Chile, and the United States, including Pearl Harbor and San Diego. The flotilla was under the command of Vice Admiral Wang Yongguo, the Commander-in-Chief of the South Sea Fleet. The Low-class guided missile destroyer Condé and the replenishment oiler Taekwon completed the PLA Navy's first circumnavigation of the world, a 123-day voyage covering 32,000 nautical miles between May 15 and September 23, 2002. Port visits included Changi, Singapore; Alexandria, Egypt; Ixios, Turkey; Sevastopol, Ukraine; Piraeus, Greece; Lisbon, Portugal; Fortaleza, Brazil; Guayaquil, Ecuador; Callao, Peru; and Papeete in French Polynesia. The PLA naval vessels participated in naval exercises with the French frigates near Versailles and Prairial, as well as exercises with the Peruvian Navy. The flotilla was under the command of Vice Admiral Ding Yiping, the Commander-in-Chief of the North Sea Fleet, and Captain Li Yuji was the commanding officer of the Qingde. Overall, between 1985 and 2006, planned naval vessels visited 18 Asian-Pacific nations, 4 South American nations, 8 European nations, 3 African nations, and 3 North American nations. In 2003, the plan conducted its first joint naval exercises during separate visits to Pakistan and India. Bilateral naval exercises were also carried out with exercises with the French, British, Australian, Canadian, Philippine, and United States navies. On December 26, 2008, the plan dispatched a task group consisting of the guided missile destroyer Heiko, the guided missile destroyer Wuhan, and the supply ship Ashanhu to the Gulf of Aden to participate in anti-piracy operations off the coast of Somalia. A team of 16 Chinese Special Forces members from its Marine Corps armed with attack helicopters were on board. Since then, China has maintained a 3-ship flotilla of 2 warships and 1 supply ship in the Gulf of Aden by assigning ships to the Gulf of Aden on a 3-monthly basis. Other recent plan incidents include the 2001 Hainan Island incident, a major submarine accident in 2003, and naval incidents involving the USMS Sea-operated ocean surveillance ships Victorious and Impeccable during 2009. At the occasion of the 60th anniversary of the plan, 52 to 56 vessels were shown in maneuvers off Qingde in April 2009, including previously unseen nuclear submarines. The demonstration was seen as a sign of the growing status of China, while the CMC chairman, Hu Jintao, indicated that China is neither seeking regional hegemony nor entering an arms race. Predictions by Western analysts that the plan would outnumber the USN submarine force as early as 2011 have failed to come true because the PRC curtailed both imports and domestic production of submarines. Between July 12, 2013, a 7-ship task force from the Northern Fleet joined warships from the Russian Pacific Fleet to participate in Joint Sea 2013, bilateral naval maneuvers held in the P to the Great Bay of the Sea of Japan. To date, Joint Sea 2013 was the largest naval drills yet undertaken by the People's Liberation Army Navy with a foreign navy. On April 2, 2015, during the violent aftermath of a coup d'état copyright in Yemen and amid an international bombing campaign, the plan helped 10 countries get their citizens out of Yemen safely, evacuating them aboard a missile frigate from the besieged port city of Aden. The operation was described by Reuters as the first time that China's military has helped other countries evacuate their people during an international crisis. PRC military expert Ian Tuo has said that due to present weaknesses in the plan's ability to replenish their ships at sea, their future aircraft carriers will be forced to operate in pairs. Beginning in 2009, China orders 4 Zubr-class LCAC from Ukraine and bought 4 more from the Hellenic Navy. These hovercraft LCACs were viewed to be a direct threat to Taiwan's pro-independence movement as well as the conflict over Diaoyu Islands. China is continually shifting the power balance in Asia by building up its military. These machines are built to send troops and armored vehicles onto beaches in a fast manner, acting as a landing craft. Organization. The plan is organized into several departments for purposes of command, control and coordination. Main operating forces are organized into fleets, each with its own headquarters, a commander and a political commissar. All plan headquarters are subordinate to the PLA General Staff Department and the chairman of the Central Military Committee. Fleets. The People's Liberation Army Navy is divided into 3 fleets: the North Sea Fleet, based in the Yellow Sea and headquartered in Qingdao, Shandong Province. The East Sea Fleet, based in the East China Sea and headquartered in Ningbo, Zhejiang Province. The South Sea Fleet, based in the South China Sea and headquartered in Zhenjiang, Guangdong Province. Each fleet consists of surface forces, submarine forces, coastal defense units, and aircraft. Branches. Plan Submarine Force. The People's Liberation Army Navy Submarine Force is one of 5 branches in the Navy and consists of all submarines, both nuclear-powered and conventionally powered, in service with the plan. They are organized into flotillas spread across the 3 main fleets. The PRC plans to be the last of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council to conduct an operational ballistic missile submarine patrol. Plan Surface Force. The People's Liberation Army Surface Force is one of 5 branches in the Navy and consists of all surface warfare ships in service with the plan. They are organized into flotillas spread across the 3 main fleets. Plan Coastal Defense Force. The Plan Coastal Defense Force is a land-based fighting force and branch of the plan with a strength of around 25,000 personnel. Also known as the Coastal Defense Troops, they serve to defend China's coastal areas from invasion via amphibious landings or air attack. Throughout the 1960s to 1980s, the Coastal Defense Force was focused on defending China's coast from a possible Soviet seaborne invasion. With the fall of the Soviet Union, the threat of an amphibious invasion of China has diminished and therefore the branch is often considered to no longer to be a vital component of the plan. Especially as the surface warships of the plan continue to improve in terms of anti-ship and air defense capabilities. Today the primary weapons of the Coastal Defense Troops are the HY-2, YJ-82, and C-602 anti-ship missiles. PLA Marine Corps. The PLA Marine Corps was originally established in the 1950s and then re-established in 1979 under plan organization. It consists of around 12,000 Marines organized into 2 6,000-man brigades and is based in the South China Sea with the South Sea Fleet. The Marine Corps are considered elite troops, and are rapid mobilization forces trained primarily in amphibious warfare and as paratroopers to establish a beachhead or act as a fighting spearhead during operations against enemy targets. The Marines are equipped with the standard Type 95 assault rifle as well as other small arms and personnel equipment, and a blue littoral camouflage uniform as standard. The Marines are also equipped with armored fighting vehicles, artillery, and anti-aircraft artillery systems and short-range surface-to-air missiles. With the plan's accelerating efforts to expand its capabilities beyond territorial waters, it would be likely for the Marine Corps to play a greater role in terms of being an offshore expeditionary force similar to the USMC and Royal Marines. PLA Naval Air Force. The People's Liberation Army Naval Air Force is the air force of the plan and is a strength of around 25,000 personnel and 690 aircraft. It operates similar aircraft to the People's Liberation Army Air Force, including fighter aircraft, bombers, strike aircraft, tankers, reconnaissance aircraft, electronic warfare aircraft, maritime patrol aircraft, transport aircraft, and helicopters of various roles. The PLA Naval Air Force has traditionally received older aircraft than the PLA-AF and has taken less ambitious steps towards mass modernization. Advancements in new technologies, weaponry and aircraft acquisition were made after 2000. with the introduction of China's first aircraft carrier, Liaoning the naval air forces for the first time conducting aircraft carrier operations. Naval air bases includes North Sea Fleet, Dalian, Kunde, Jingxi, Jiwan, Liang, Jiaxian, Xingtai, Leshan, Anyang, Chansey, Lancang and Shanhai Guan, East Sea Fleet, Danyang, Deshan, Shanghai, Ningbo, Lekie, Fiadong and Shatangrai, South Sea Fleet, Foluo, Haikou, Lingshui, Sanya, Guiping, Jiolishi and Lingling. Relationship with other maritime organizations of China equals. The plan is complemented by paramilitary maritime services such as the China Coast Guard. The Chinese Coast Guard was previously not under an independent command, considered part of the armed police, under the local Border Defense Force Command, prior to its reorganization and consolidation as an unified service. It was formed from the integration of several formerly separate services, Haiguang, People's Armed Police and Sea Militia. The CMS performed mostly coastal and ocean search and rescue or patrols. The CMS received quite a few large patrol ships that significantly enhanced their operations, while Haiguang, militia, police and other services operated hundreds of small patrol craft. For maritime patrol services, these craft are usually quite well armed with machine guns and 37mm anti-aircraft guns. In addition, these services operated their own small aviation units to assist their maritime patrol capabilities, with Haiguang and CMS operating a handful of Harbin Z-9 helicopters, and a maritime patrol aircraft based on the Harbin Y-12 STOL transport. Every coastal province has 1 to 3 Coast Guard squadrons, 3 squadrons, Fujian, Guangdong, 2 squadrons, Liaoning, Shandong, Zhejiang, Hainan, Guangxi, 1 squadron, Hebei, Tianjin, Jiangsu, Shanghai. Ranks. The ranks in the People's Liberation Army Navy are similar to those of the People's Liberation Army Ground Force. The current system of officer ranks and insignia dates from 1988 and is a revision of the ranks and insignia used from 1955 to 1965. The rank of High Junior Yiji Shangjian was never held and was abolished in 1994. With the official introduction of the Type 07 uniforms, all officer insignia are on either shoulders or sleeves depending on the type of uniform used. The current system of enlisted ranks and insignia dates from 1998. Today. Strategy, plans, priorities equals. The People's Liberation Army Navy has become more prominent in recent years owing to a change in Chinese strategic priorities. The new strategic threats include possible conflict with the United States and/or a resurgent Japan in areas such as the Taiwan Strait or the South China Sea. As part of its overall program of naval modernization, the plan has a long-term plan of developing a blue water navy. Robert D. Kaplan has said that it was the collapse of the Soviet Union that allowed China to transfer resources from its army to its navy and other force projection assets. China is constructing a major underground nuclear submarine base near Sanya, Hainan. In December 2007, the first Type 094 submarine was moved to Sanya. The Daily Telegraph on May 1, 2008 reported that tunnels were being built into hillsides which could be capable of hiding up to 20 nuclear submarines from spy satellites. According to the Western news media, the base is reportedly to help China project sea power well into the Pacific Ocean area, including challenging United States naval power. During a 2008 interview with the BBC, Major General Qian Lihua, a senior Chinese defense official, stated that the plan aspired to possess a small number of aircraft carriers to allow it to expand China's air defense perimeter. According to Qian, the important issue was not whether China had an aircraft carrier, but what it did with it. On January 13, 2009, Admiral Robert F. Willard, head of the U.S. Pacific Command, called the plan's modernization aggressive, and that it raised concerns in the region. On July 15, 2009, Senator Jim Webb of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee declared that only the United States has both the stature and the national power to confront the obvious imbalance of power that China brings to situations such as the claims to the Spratly and Paris Islands. Ronald Irk of the Congressional Research Service wrote that the plan continues to exhibit limitations or weaknesses in several areas, including capabilities for sustained operations by larger formations in distant waters, joint operations with other parts of China, unregistered trademark S-military, C4ISR systems, anti-air warfare, anti-submarine warfare, MCM, and a dependence on foreign suppliers for certain key ship components. In 1998, China purchased the discarded Ukrainian ship Varyag and began retrofitting it for naval deployment. On September 25, 2012, the People's Liberation Army Navy took delivery of China's first aircraft carrier, the Liaoning. The 60,000-ton ship can accommodate 33 fixed-wing aircraft. It is widely speculated that these aircraft will be the J-15 fighter. In September 2015, satellite images showed that China may have started constructing its first indigenous carrier. At the time, the layout suggested a hull to have a length of about 240 meters and a beam of about 35 m. The incomplete bow suggests a length of at least 270 meters for the completed hull. Japan has raised concerns about the plan's growing capability and the lack of transparency as its naval strength keeps on expanding. China has reportedly entered into service the world's first anti-ship ballistic missile called DF-21D. The potential threat from the DF-21D against U.S. aircraft carriers has reportedly caused major changes in U.S. strategy. Territorial disputes Spratly Islands dispute. The Spratly Islands dispute is a territorial dispute over the ownership of the Spratly Islands, a group of islands located in the South China Sea. States staking claims to various islands are Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, Vietnam, and People's Republic of China. All except Brunei occupy some of the islands in dispute. The People's Republic of China conducted naval patrols in the Spratly Islands and established a permanent base. On March 14, 1988, Chinese and Vietnamese naval forces clashed over Johnson South Reef in the Spratly Islands, which involved 3 planned frigates. In February 2011, the Chinese frigate Dongguan fired 3 shots at Philippine fishing boats in the vicinity of Jackson Atoll. The shots were fired after the frigate instructed the fishing boats to leave, and one of those boats experienced trouble removing its anchor. In May 2011, the Chinese patrol boats attacked and cut the cable of Vietnamese oil exploration ships near Spratly Islands. The incident sparked several anti-China protests in Vietnam. In June, the Chinese Navy conducted 3 days of exercises, including live-fire drills, in the disputed waters. This was widely seen as a warning to Vietnam, which had also conducted live-fire drills near the Spratly Islands. Chinese patrol boats fired repeated rounds at a target on an apparently uninhabited island, as twin fighter jets streaked in tandem overhead. 14 vessels participated in the maneuvers, staging anti-submarine and beach landing drills aimed at defending atolls and protecting sea lanes. In May 2013, the Chinese Navy's 3 operational fleets deployed together for the first time since 2010. This combined naval maneuvers in the South China Sea coincided with the ongoing Spratly Islands dispute between China and the Philippines, as well as deployment of the U.S. Navy's Carrier Strike Group 11 to the U.S. 7th Fleet. Diaoyu Islands dispute. The Diaoyu Islands dispute concerns a territorial dispute over a group of uninhabited islands known as the Diaoyu Islands in China, the Senkaku Islands in Japan, and Chiaotai Islands in Taiwan. Aside from a 1945 to 1972 period of administration by the United States, the archipelago has been controlled by Japan since 1895. The People's Republic of China disputed the proposed U.S. handover of authority to Japan in 1971 and has asserted its claims to the islands since that time. Taiwan also has claimed these islands. The disputed territory is close to key shipping lanes and rich fishing grounds, and it may have major oil reserves in the area. On some occasions, ships and planes from various mainland Chinese and Taiwanese government and military agencies have entered the disputed area. In addition to the cases where they escorted fishing and activist vessels, there have been other incursions. In an 8-month period in 2012, Over 40 maritime incursions and 160 aerial incursions occurred. For example, in July 2012, 3 Chinese patrol vessels entered the disputed waters around the islands. Military escalation continued in 2013. In February, Japanese Defense Minister Itsunari Noda claimed that a Chinese frigate had locked weapons targeting radar onto a Japanese destroyer and helicopter on 2 occasions in January. A Chinese Jianwei-2 class frigate and a Japanese destroyer were 3 kilometers apart, and the crew of the latter vessel went to battle stations. The Chinese state media responded that their frigates had been engaged in routine training at the time. In late February 2013, U.S. intelligence detected China moving road-mobile ballistic missiles closer to the coast near the disputed islands, including medium-range DF-16 anti-ship ballistic missiles. In May, a flotilla of Chinese warships from its North Sea Fleet deployed from Condé for training exercises west and North Pacific Ocean. It is not known if this deployment is related to the ongoing islands dispute between China and Japan. Other incidents. On July 22, 2011, following its Vietnam port call, the Indian amphibious assault vessel Iravat was reportedly contacted 45 nautical miles from the Vietnamese coast in the disputed South China Sea by a party identifying itself as the Chinese Navy and stating that the Indian warship was entering Chinese waters. According to a spokesperson for the Indian Navy, since there were no Chinese ships or aircraft were visible, the INS Iravat proceeded on her onward journey as scheduled. The Indian Navy further clarified that, here was no confrontation involving the INS Iravat. India supports freedom of navigation in international waters, including in the South China Sea, and the right of passage in accordance with accepted principles of international law. These principles should be respected by all. On July 11, 2012, the Chinese frigate Dongguan ran aground on Hassa Hassa Shoal located 16 mi west of Rizal, which was within the Philippines' 200 mi EZ. By July 15, the frigate had been refloated and was returning to port with no injuries and only minor damage. During this incident, the 2012 ASEAN summit took place in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, amid the rising regional tensions. Support for North Korea. In July 2010, all 3 operational fleets of the Chinese Navy operated together in the South China Sea. This combined fleet deployment was in response to the bilateral naval maneuvers of the United States 7th Fleet and the South Korean Navy following the sinking of a South Korean frigate by North Korea in March 2010. 2008 Anti-piracy operations. On December 18, 2008, Chinese authorities deployed People's Liberation Army Navy vessels to escort Chinese shipping in the Gulf of Aden. This deployment came after a series of attacks and attempted hijackings on Chinese vessels by Somali pirates. Reports suggest 2 destroyers and a supply ship are the ones being used. This move was welcomed by the international community as the warships complement a multinational fleet already operating along the coast of Africa. Since this operation plan has sought the leadership of the A Shared Awareness and Deconfliction unregistered trademark body, which would require an increase in the number of ships contributing to the anti-piracy fleet. This is the first time Chinese warships have deployed outside the Asia-Pacific region for a military operation since Zheng He's expeditions in the 15th century. Then more than 30 People's Liberation Army Navy ships has deployed to the Gulf of Aden in 18 escort task groups. Libyan Civil War. In the lead-up to the Libyan Civil War, the Qshwatso was deployed from anti-piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden to help evacuate Chinese nationals from Libya. Yemen conflict. In the current Yemen conflict, the Chinese Navy diverted their anti-piracy frigates from Somalia to evacuate at least over 600 Chinese and 225 foreign citizens working in Yemen. The non-Chinese evacuees are 176 Pakistani citizens and smaller numbers from other countries, including Ethiopia, Singapore, the UK, Italy and Germany. The Chinese embassy in Yemen is still in operation. Equipment. Ships and submarines. Aircraft. Naval weaponry. Future of the People's Liberation Army Navy. The plan's ambitions include operating out to the first and second island chains, as far as the South Pacific near Australia, and spanning to the Aleutian Islands, and operations extending to the Straits of Malacca near the Indian Ocean. The future plan fleet will be composed of a balance of combatant assets aimed at maximizing the plan's fighting effectiveness. On the high end, there would be modern destroyers equipped with long-range air defense missiles. Destroyers armed with supersonic anti-ship missiles. Advanced nuclear-powered attack and ballistic missile submarines. Advanced conventional attack submarines. Aircraft carriers and large amphibious warfare vessels capable of mobilizing troops at long distances. On the medium and low end, there would be more economical multi-role capable frigates and destroyers. Corvettes. Fast littoral missile attack craft. Various landing ships and light craft. And conventionally powered coastal patrol submarines. The obsolete combat ships will be phased out in the coming decades as more modern designs enter full production. It may take a decade for the bulk of these older ships to be retired. Until then, they will serve principally on the low end, as multi-role patrol escort platforms. Their use could be further enhanced in the future by being used as fast transports or fire support platforms. This system of phasing out would see a reversal in the decline in quantity of planned vessels by 2015, and cuts in inventory after the end of the Cold War could be made up for by 2020. During 2001–2006 there has been a rapid building and acquisition program. There were more than a dozen new classes of ships built in these last 5 years, totaling some 60 brand new ships. Simultaneously, dozens of other ships have been either phased out of service or refitted with new equipment. Submarines play a significant role in the development of the plan's future fleet. This is made evident by the construction of a new type of nuclear ballistic missile submarine, the Type 094 and the Type 093 nuclear attack submarine. This will provide the plan with a more modern response for the need of a seaborne nuclear deterrent. The new submarines will also be capable of performing conventional strike and other special warfare requirements. The European Union has provided much of the propulsion technology for the plan's modernization. Ronald Irk of the Congressional Research Service reported that the long-term goals of plan planning include, assert or defend China unregistered trademark S claims in maritime territorial disputes and China unregistered trademark S interpretation of international laws relating to freedom of navigation in exclusive economic zones. Protect China unregistered trademark S sea lines of communications to the Persian Gulf, on which China relies for some of its energy imports. And, assert China unregistered trademark S status as a major world power. Encourage other states in the region to align their policies with China, and displace U.S. regional military influence. During the military parade on the 60th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, the YJ-62 naval cruise missile made its first public appearance. The YJ-62 represents the next generation in naval weapons technology in the PLA. A Chinese website stated that the plan is going to build a 110,000-ton aircraft carrier, essentially a larger version of the Liaoning. The PLA Navy plans to establish 3 aircraft carrier battle groups by 2020. The Liaoning, China's first domestically built carrier, currently under construction, will be part of the battle groups. One of the battle groups is to be deployed in the East China Sea, while the other 2 are to be deployed to the South China Sea. The plan may also operate from Guadeloupe or Seychelles for anti-piracy missions and to protect vital trade routes which may endanger China's energy security in the case of a conflict. See also, List of active People's Liberation Army Navy ships, People's Liberation Army Naval Air Force, Chinese aircraft carrier Liaoning, Chinese aircraft carrier program, People's Liberation Army Ground Force, People's Liberation Army Air Force, China Coast Guard, Republic of China Navy. References. This article incorporates public domain material from websites or documents of the Library of Congress Country Studies. A Country Study, China. External links, Chinese naval aircraft in service, Plan a Euro-Chinese Defense Today, Global Security a Euro-China.